There's one thing you can be sure about with Norwich City: there's never a dull moment. 1996-97 may not have been the most successful, a season of consolidation more like, but still they ended it in the limelight. On the catwalk, to be exact, with Norfolk supermodel Sarah Thomas helping to unveil the strip which will grace the First Division over the coming months. A few of the players joined Sarah back in May and showed plenty of poise themselves. The shape of things to come then paraded with the help of club director Delia Smith and strip designer Bruce Oldfield. But let's rewind to the start of the season, with Mike Walker looking back at the beginning of his second spell as Canary manager.
Yeah, well, the pleasing thing was that the lads took on board the slightly different style of play and what we wanted to do, and there was a good atmosphere at the training ground and everywhere, so that helps. Initially we had a couple of good results. Again, obviously the Swindon game, which was unknown to a degree, they just come up in flying, and we played really well against them, and I think that set the tone.
It was indeed the ideal start to a new season. Plenty of optimism, a crowd of about 15,000, and Mike Walker back at the helm. His second spell in charge seemed to go down well with the fans. They were in noisy mood on the opening day. Some of the younger ones even made it onto the pitch before kick-off. A friendly invasion as the new season burst into life. And it proved to be an encouraging start for Norwich, and Andy Johnson in particular. He was one of those who worked with Mike Walker in his previous spell in charge at Carrow Road, and he opened the season with an all-action performance which proved to be too much for Swindon, newly promoted from the second division and hoping for a good start themselves. Johnson was actually suffering from a touch of laryngitis, but it didn't seem to bother him too much as he opened the scoring for Norwich after 26 minutes. The build-up to the goal had much to admire. The involvement of Keith O'Neill and Neil Adams impressive, and Johnson was in the right place to make the score Norwich 1, Swindon 0. Soon afterwards it was 2-0. Robert Fleck marking the first game of the season with his first goal of the season. A finish from the edge of the penalty area to be proud of. Fleck, who scored 12 goals in season 1995-96, opening his account for 96-97 in spectacular style, racing on to the through ball and delighting the home supporters with a stunning finish. So, hot conditions, a warm reception, and a satisfying start to the season for Norwich, 2-0 winners, and Mike Walker's influence quickly evident.
The fans love him. I've worked with Mike for quite a long time, through the reserves when he was here, a reserve team manager. He's just brought the atmosphere back to the club, I think, and the fans all appreciate it, and that they've done what they've done today and helped us win.
So the first league game produced 3 points. The first Coca-Cola Cup action of the season produced a 1-1 draw at Oxford, with Andy Johnson again the Canary marksman. Norwich and Oxford would get to know each other well in the next few days. This was the first of 3 early season matches between the two. It ended with the sides level, thanks to this equaliser from Nigel Jemson just a few minutes after Norwich had taken the lead. 1-1, but an away draw meant the Canaries would be favourites to go through in the second leg at Carrow Road. Next up, Norwich took on the team who dominate the First Division with a brand of football which 9 months on made them worthy champions, Bolton Wanderers. It was a game to forget though for Brian Gunn. A few months earlier he'd been a Canary hero at Burnden Park, saving a hat-trick of penalties in a Coca-Cola Cup shootout. This time he was left red-faced as Nathan Blake gave Bolton the lead. And the home side went further ahead at the start of the second half. The Norwich defenders were unable to make a decisive challenge, and Michael Johansson made it 2-0 to Bolton. Norwich fought their way back into the match thanks to a man who'd become one of the big successes of the season for them, Darren Eadie. His first goal of the campaign was fairly typical of what was to follow in the months ahead. Balance allied to composure. That made it 2-1, and although Norwich seemed capable of an equaliser at times, it was Bolton who had the final say. They clinched all 3 points with Nathan Blake's second goal of the game, and it ended Bolton 3, Norwich 1. After the disappointment of Burnden Park, it was back to the Manor Ground next for Norwich. And after just 12 minutes of the game, the Canaries, in red here, went ahead through Neil Adams. The goal was a sign of things to come for Adams, who was about to embark on one of his best ever spells with the club in terms of goal scoring and performance. A welcome 1-0 victory then, but the match ended on a sour note as both Carl Bradshaw and Oxford's David Rush were sent off. Bradshaw was making his first appearance of the season, but he failed to go the distance, shown the red card by referee Alan Wiley after that confrontation with Rush. Problems for Norwich ahead of the next match against Wolves at Carrow Road. They were without three of their stars, Keith O'Neill, Darren Eadie and Andy Marshall, all away on international duty. The game, though, was settled from the spot midway through the first half. Wolves protested long and hard about the decision to award a penalty, but the replay shows Mark Venus did indeed bring down Darryl Such in the area. Neil Adams stepped forward to make it 2 goals in 2 games from the spot. So a pleasing 3 points and an equally pleasing clean sheet for Mike Walker, Brian Gunn and his colleagues. Wolves would prove too strong for many defences, but Norwich were more than equal to the task. They even came close to adding a second through Ian Crook's excellent free kick here, but the 1-0 win was enough to put the Canaries 4th in the table.
Main things, 3 points. Not too overjoyed with the way we played, but we've got the 3 points and it keeps us up there. We would like to have played a bit more fluently, but Wolves played well, and at the end of the day we've got the 3 points, all that matters.
An eventful match next at Carrow Road, and that's an understatement. The opposition Oxford, the occasion Coca-Cola Cup first round second leg. The sides level at 1-1 after the first leg. Things started well enough for Norwich. They were ahead after 10 minutes thanks to the trusty penalty technique of Neil Adams. So 2-1 on aggregate, but then things began to fall apart. Just a few minutes later, Robert Fleck was involved in a tussle with Oxford's Martin Gray and paid a high price. Gray escaped with a booking for his involvement, but Fleck was adjudged to be guilty of violent conduct and was sent off. And that rather established the course of events for the rest of the evening. Oxford got back on level terms 7 minutes into the second half. Matt Elliott beating Brian Gunn to make it 1-1 on the night, 2-2 on aggregate. And then an earlier booking came back to haunt Darren Eadie. 10 minutes of normal time were remaining, and his challenge on Mike Ford was deemed worthy of a booking by the referee. It was his second yellow card, and therefore Eadie saw red. Norwich were becoming more and more frustrated by the refereeing decisions. Eadie was fuming. At the end of 90 minutes, though, the sides couldn't be separated, and that meant extra time when Oxford finally made the most of their 2-man advantage. Mike Ford gave them the lead for the first time in the tie with a header. And it didn't take long for a 1-goal lead to become a 2-goal lead, as Martin Aldridge finished off a clever Oxford move. So 3-1 to Oxford on the night, and it was really all over for Norwich, but they kept pressing forward bravely, and they got a consolation goal after Adi Akinbaye had been brought down on the edge of the area. It was a case of perseverance paying off for Akinbaye and his teammates amid all the mayhem. Another yellow card was brandished by the referee, and from the resulting free kick, Neil Adams scored his second goal of the night. But the match ended Norwich 2, Oxford 3. Oxford winners 4-3 on aggregate, and Norwich would miss out on a Coca-Cola Cup run. On the final whistle, all eyes were on the referee, but Norwich manager Mike Walker wasn't too downhearted, just a little frustrated.
If I said what I really believed about certain things and certain people, I'd probably get 10 years. So at the end of the day, having had 5-10 minutes to calm down, I don't think it's worth it. I'd rather dwell on and say that the fact that the players, I think, showed tremendous application and will to try and get something back.
A morale-boosting performance followed at Bradford, as Norwich once again looked like a team capable of earning promotion. In fact, Bradford manager Chris Kamara described Norwich afterwards as the best Division 1 team he'd seen. Darryl Such got the first goal for Norwich against a team who were finding their first few weeks in Division 1 a daunting prospect. And before half-time, an impressive show from Norwich was rewarded with another goal. Darren Eadie again outstanding for the Canaries with his second goal of the season. He picked up the ball just inside the Bradford half, edged closer to goal, and then let fly with an unstoppable shot. The match ended Bradford 0, Norwich 2, and the Canaries' good form in the league had yielded 4 wins in 5 matches. The table showed the Canaries well placed just behind Barnsley, and with 2 home matches coming up, the prospect seemed rosy. Queen's Park Rangers were without a manager when they arrived at Carrow Road, and Norwich must have expected to take maximum points from the match. Mike Walker called up Adi Akinbaye to the starting lineup with Robert Fleck and Keith O'Neill both missing. But despite 1 or 2 impressive moments, things didn't go as well as the Canaries must have hoped. Norwich, though, did go ahead in the first half from a free kick. It was awarded for a foul by Alan MacDonald on Sean Carey, and a blatant one at that. MacDonald was given the yellow card and was then punished again as Neil Adams scored from the free kick, his 5th goal in 5 games, and one which left Rangers goalkeeper Jurgen Sommer completely helpless. No disguising the delight of the Norwich players, as a plan which had clearly been practised and fine-tuned over a number of training sessions was executed perfectly in the heat of battle. But Norwich were unable to hang on to all 3 points, conceding an equaliser with 10 minutes of the match remaining. First, Danny Mills became the 4th Norwich player to be sent off in a fortnight for that foul on Trevor Sinclair. Mills felt he'd been harshly treated. His challenge was certainly not malicious, a tug of Sinclair's shirt, but it was a second bookable offence, and he and his colleagues paid a high price as Rangers equalised from the free kick. The kick was taken by Sinclair and finished in some style by Andrew Impey as the ball fell to him on the edge of the penalty area. Undoubtedly a case of 2 points dropped for the Canaries. It ended 1-1.
We sat back second half and we sort of give them some opportunities to score. Young Danny Mills, pulled Trevor Sinclair down at the edge of the box, and really to give away free kicks like that around there, it's going to be dangerous. And Rob Newman did well to get his head on the ball, but I think it was Andy Impey who struck the shot, and just to an unfortunate deflection of John Polston. We didn't really look as if we were in trouble. But we were always sitting back on our own box and sort of letting them take the game to us. Obviously we can learn from that and take it to the next game. Now we need to try and kill teams off at home.
But more frustration followed in the very next home game against Southend. In truth, it was a game of few highlights. Norwich unable to break down a resolute Southend defence and failing to score for the first time since the season started. Darren Eadie among those denied in a goalless draw. But if there was frustration at Carrow Road, it was a different story in the next match at Portsmouth, as the Canaries returned to winning ways. Adi Akinbaye and Neil Adams were involved in the only goal of the game, and it was left to Ian Crook to come up with the kind of finish Norwich fans expect. A 3rd successive away win, Portsmouth 0, Norwich 1. Plenty of effort from the Canaries in their next home game against Tranmere, and lots of chances too. But in the end they had to settle for a point after the Merseyside team had taken the lead thanks to the predatory instincts of John Aldridge. From then on, Norwich peppered the Tranmere goal, but they scored just once. Andy Johnson on as a substitute, making an immediate impression by setting up Robert Fleck. Norwich thought they'd won the match through Neil Adams later in the second half. A wonderful run by Keith O'Neill certainly deserved to be rewarded with a goal, but Adams was adjudged to be offside, and the match ended Norwich 1, Tranmere 1. Norwich were left to reflect on what might have been.
Unlucky we scored a second goal, which was offside. I had a couple of chances myself. We created a lot of chances today, which was pleasing. So we got a draw. We never lost, so we'll keep going on.
Ironically, while they were finding it hard to win matches at home, the Canaries were still a big success away from Carrow Road. Next up, they went to Grimsby and were comfortable winners. The match started at breakneck speed with 3 goals in the opening 8 minutes, the first of them from Darren Eadie. Grimsby, to their credit, responded quickly and were level in the 6th minute. Ashley Fickling the goal scorer. But Norwich didn't look back from the moment they restored the lead again through Eadie. It enabled him to take his tally for the season to 4, but owed much to goalkeeper Jason Piercy. His embarrassment obvious, and Eadie delighted to take full advantage. And things didn't really improve for Piercy and his teammates as Norwich went further ahead before half-time. This time Neil Adams' cross was a real cause for concern in the Grimsby defence. And when Robert Fleck played the ball back into the danger zone, John McDermott turned the ball into his own net. A miserable 90 minutes for Grimsby also saw them lose Gary Childs, shown the red card. And they conceded a 4th goal in the second half. The pick of the day, scored by Keith O'Neill. It made the final score Grimsby 1, Norwich 4. Norwich in great shape then going into the first East Anglian derby of the season. In fact, both sides were looking good. Ipswich had been beaten just twice in their first 10 games. Norwich could go top briefly if they won. A crowd of more than 20,000 watched the action. On the bench for Norwich, Ian Crook, the man who almost moved to Ipswich in the summer, only to return to Carrow Road before the season started. He was sure to attract plenty of attention, even as a substitute. Your match commentator is Tony Jones.
Holston now for Norwich. Fleck has dropped deep and has found some room. He's got the return. He's in. It's Robert Fleck. It's Andy Johnson. Andy Johnson. Norwich City in front after 19 minutes. Robert Fleck can celebrate too, because between them they pulled the Ipswich Town defence apart. Fleck had dropped deep. He found some room. Johnson found him with the return, and unselfishly he set up Johnson for the goal. Splendid work by Fleck. Equally quick thinking by Johnson. And Johnson, he could see, was in the better position to put Norwich City in front. The 1-2, the 3-4 almost with Fleck. And that's the first goal for Norwich. Now Williams. That's a better ball in. Matthew needs to turn, does he? Williams. Easy for Gunn. Good throw out by Gunn too. Put a lot of effort into that. And it's O'Neill who's put a lot of effort into the run forward. He's won the free kick. Found himself in a real sandwich then. Keith O'Neill playing with plenty of spark and plenty of life. Bundled Tarico off the ball as Milton came across. Perhaps fortunate to get the free kick. But a good throw out by Brian Gunn. Mauricio Tarico put under some pressure there. Eadie with the free kick. Aimed in. And that's the goal. It's Johnson again. 35 minutes gone. Andy Johnson second and Norwich City second. Difficult free kick to defend against, curling in all the time, and it was Johnson who was up first. Right on his line, Johnson in, strong as ever ahead of Scowcroft. Powerful header by Andy Johnson. Scores so many goals from set pieces. Did it on numerous occasions last season from corners, then he did it from the free kick. First free kick of the second half. Ipswich really have to get an early goal to make something of this game. Scowcroft with a header. Great effort and a great goal. They're back in it right at the start of the second half, and it's Danny Sonner. 67 seconds into the second half. The free kick from Tarico. Good strong header by Scowcroft, and a super finish there by Danny Sonner. It's Danny Sonner's first appearance in the East Anglian derby, and he'll certainly remember it. Sonner who'd come forward. Mills to find Eadie. Fleck is alongside him. There's only Fleck in the middle. Steve Sedgley clears the danger. Steve Sedgley wondering then why the Ipswich back line wasn't firm. Another sparkling run though by Darren Eadie, who's shown great pace and great acceleration to test Tirico and Stockwell. Good header, good goal. It's John Polston. The gentlest of touches by John Polston, but it was just enough. And it was just the answer which Norwich City needed. They've been under some pressure, but they've answered it with a goal. Midway through the second half, John Polston's John Wood header, and Norwich City 3-1 up. Stockwell had come away off the post, and the merest touch enough to beat Richard Wright. John Polston clutches the air. Mike Walker gets to his feet. Andy Johnson certainly happy, as it was last season. A Norwich win at Carrow Road. Not the same controversy which surrounded last season's fixture, but it's a win which takes Norwich to the top of the First Division, if only until the end of the Saturday programme. Ipswich with work to do to prove that they're better than merely fringe players in the promotion game. Handshakes all round. Ian Crook meeting up again with the players he might have been joining during the summer. Final score at Carrow Road, Norwich City 3, Ipswich Town 1.
So 3 points, all the sweeter of course, bearing in mind the opposition and the fact that Norwich were now top of the First Division. Mike, back on top of the league.
Yeah, I mean that's nice, but the important thing was obviously to get 3 points wherever we were, just to keep us in the frame. But yeah, it's a nice, I've got to admit, it's nice to be on top, but obviously there's games tomorrow and we could be off it again. It's just important to keep the run going.
Bar about 10 minutes at the start of the second half, you dominated the match as well.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought we were excellent the first half. I thought we played good football. I mean, the first goal, you'll go a long way to beat the actual build-up to that. I thought it was a tremendous goal. And, the old thing, don't concede a goal early, and what do? We go out and concede a goal. And obviously it gave them a lift. We lost it for about 5 to 10 minutes then, but we regained our composure, and I thought we were always capable of going on and scoring another, which we did, and it was reasonably easy after that.
This was how the table looked that Friday evening. Norwich top, although that state of affairs would last less than 24 hours. Bolton would move above them again with a victory the following day. But the East Anglian derby had given the Canaries a momentum which was to be maintained in their next home match just a few days later against Oldham. Inevitably the crowd was smaller, but the result was the same, 3 more points. A patient approach was needed from the Canaries. It took them 70 minutes to make the breakthrough thanks to Darren Eadie. And Eadie was the inspiration for the Canaries' second goal, this time racing past defender Craig Fleming before crossing for Neil Adams to score his 6th goal of the season. Norwich 2, Oldham 0, and the past 5 matches had yielded 13 points for the Canaries. Norwich travelled to Manchester more in hope than expectation. They rarely pick up points at Main Road, and this match was to be no different. 31 minutes gone when Nicky Summerby's pass created the chance for Nigel Clough to open the scoring. And Manchester City added a second goal 8 minutes into the second half. The goal stemmed from a rare error from John Polston. The man to take advantage, Paul Dickoff. Dickoff certainly made the most of his opportunity, showing plenty of composure to beat Brian Gunn. So Norwich, who'd not won in their previous 21 visits to Main Road, would return home pointless again, although they did get back into the match. A shot here from Rob Newman forced a fine save from Andy Dibble. And then Norwich did pull a goal back through substitute Keith Scott, his first goal of the season, and a spectacular one at that after a good Norwich move and some unconvincing defending. It ended 2-1 to Manchester City, but it was the Canaries' first defeat in 11 league matches, and certainly no real cause for concern. Next came another tough away match, a chance to return to winning ways, and a reunion with former Canaries favourite Steve Bruce. Guiding you through all the action is commentator Tony Jones.
Adams. He's already behind Ablett, and he's got a chance to take the fullback on here. Who's in the middle? It's Andy Johnson. Norwich City's first meaningful attack has produced a goal. And another goal for Andy Johnson. It's Johnson's 5th of the season, but good work initially by Adams. He got around Ablett and he got in the cross, but what a splendid header that was by Andy Johnson. Johnson just pulled away from his marker, and he was always first to the ball. Devlin, Horn, now Bowen. Tried to come inside, but he's got a second chance, Jason Bowen. Good cross, and an equalising goal. Superbly taken as well by Paul Devlin. It's Devlin's 4th goal of the season. Did so well then. There was a great cross as well from Steve Castle. And there was Devlin who just got there ahead of Danny Mills. Bowen did well to create the opening. Castle was free to get in the cross, and Devlin, with the tightest of angles to aim at, just managed to get enough purchase on the ball and to beat Brian Gunn. Johnson. Dragged to the ground, was he? Yes, it's a penalty. Never much doubt about it. A look of disbelief in Gary Ablett's eyes. But he tried once, and he tried a second time. The ball had gone. Johnson tumbled. And according to Mick Pearce, our referee from Portsmouth, that's the penalty. It's Neil Adams. And that's Adams' 7th goal of the season. Norwich back in front after 5 minutes of the second half. Johnson wrestled to the ground once more. Far from happy with the challenge from Holland, but he's got to be careful here as Andy Johnson, because he's already gone into the referee's notebook. Adams with the free kick. It's a goal for Keith Scott. 9 minutes of the second half gone, and Norwich now 3-1 up. What a turnaround. Strong header there from Keith Scott. This is first start of the season, and he's come up with the goods. He's come up with a goal. Good turn by Bowen. Bowen again. Leg is to his left. Aimed in towards Devlin. Second goal for Paul Devlin. No wonder he wants to get on with it. 4 minutes remaining, and Paul Devlin has given Birmingham City some hope. Good play initially by Bowen, but an excellent turn again by Devlin. Created the opening for himself, and a terrific drive.
The Colney Training Centre for our Christmas video 1996. Going to see some goals shortly and some highlights for the season. Robert Fleck, by the way. We're now we're going to ask a few lads of questions. Right, Darren? No, sorry, we'll go to Cole Bradshaw first, I think. Cole, what are your thoughts of the season?
What season?
This is Cole. Hasn't played too much this season because he's been injured, but...
I've been there now and then. 4 games. I ain't seen much, but hopefully it'll go well.
Brad's top man, by who's their top fisherman, Brad? Darren? No, we'll leave Darren. John Polston, this is... Hello. Anyway, and we go on now to Rob Newman. Right, Rob's our vice skipper, but we'll basically know him as the skipper. He is.
Why is that?
He's known as son of.
No, you're really drivel, talking drivel now, Chip. You're the one and only captain, mate, of this team. You're my hero.
Rob Newman, by the way. Keith O'Neill, Republic of Ireland international and top man, by the way. Keith, what you got to think about the season so far?
Yeah, doing all right, yeah. Just keep it going. That's it. That's the way it goes, yeah. Happy Christmas.
Thank you, Keith. And here we have self-named Alan Shearer. Right, this is Neil Adams, by the way, for those who don't recognise him. For those of you that are near the Barclay end, you won't see him up that far.
You'll see the goals going in, top goal scorer. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Darryl Such, come in, done a great job, right? Fantastic job, because he basically plays in Cole Bradshaw's position. Suchy, what you got to say about it, mate?
Well, just happy Brad's has been injured, really. Hope he didn't get back too quick.
And here we have everybody's friend, the person that everybody loves to hate, Robert Fleck. And we're going to pass this over to Robert because we think he can sing a song for you.
Well, funny enough, Ian, I'm not your friend. But anyway, I'm not going to sing you a song, but I'd just like to wish you all a Merry Christmas.
We've got to be... I think the essential thing was to get a smile back in the place and get people enjoying coming to work, the first thing. Second thing probably was to play some football, get the ball passed, and pass to each other, preferably. And the players have taken it on board, and as a result, we've got results. But it was important that we did have a good start to make it sort of really happen from then on, because people... It's like saying you're going to do that, and if you get a few bad results, obviously it doesn't seem right somehow.
What are the particular highs and positive points from your point of view?
Well, first off, I think just the way the players have responded to what we want to do, because I think that's important. If they don't, you've got a problem. Apart from that, it's just everybody pulling together. Not only the football side, I think in the club in general, where people have had a lot of kicks in the teeth just this last few years. And I think whilst I and the players will get the publicity, I think there's a lot of people worked hard behind the scenes. So we've had individual games where we're pleased about things, but Bradford, for instance, we've had 2 or 3 really where we've reached a good standard, you know, but we've got to maintain that standard. That's the problem.
The away form has been particularly good, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about highs, obviously that's a good thing, because when I was here previously we had a good away record. But the home record is one of the lows, because it's a bit disappointing. But it's not the end of the world, because at least we've been drawing at home. We've usually been winning away, so it's the same difference as far as I see. What we're striving to do is win at home and win away.
Any 1 or 2 or even more particular games that stand out as being particularly satisfying from your point of view?
Well, the Ipswich Town one was obviously, because it's a local derby, that means a lot. But I think because of the way we played, I thought we played really well that night, and I don't think anybody probably would have lived with us. The Bradford game I've mentioned, where I felt that we totally dominated the game away from home, and we're just so in control, and some of the passing and the goals were excellent. They were probably the pick, but we've played other games where we've had a good standard, you know. But Birmingham probably away, where they'd only conceded 1 goal and we scored 3. So yeah, there's been 1 or 2 decent performances.
People keep asking you what the secret to the magic formula is, because you've come back and there are certain players in the team who really were not performing anywhere to the level we've seen them doing consistently week in and week out this season. So what's the secret? Exclusively for the benefit of the fans who've bought the video.
Yeah, I don't know. As simple as that. I think hard work. I think passing the ball. I mean, I do know really to a degree. I think there's a part of it, without any doubt, is enjoyment. I mean, if you come in and enjoy, it's like any job. I don't care if it's an office work. If you go to work and you're not looking forward to going to work, you're not going to produce your best work, form, whatever. And I think that's the same on the football field. If you come to work and you're enjoying coming to work and the training's half decent and so on, then you're going to get a buzz to start with, and it's easier for the coaches to work with you. The next thing from that is that the work you actually do is quite enjoyable, and I think if you pass the ball and you get plenty of touches of the ball, if you're anything like a footballer, that I call, then you'll enjoy that, rather than just knocking it 60 yards and running after it and running back again and running after it, running back and getting 2 touches. If you get 14 touches, then you know you feel you got part of something.
Finally, the fans watching this video, they wanted you back, they've got you back, they are convinced that you will be back in the Premiership before too long.
Well, I certainly hope that we'll be back before too long. Whether it's this season remains to be seen. I mean, it would be, no one would be more pleased than me and the players and everybody if we could be this season. As all I'm saying is, let's just wait and see a little bit longer first before we see if we've got a realistic chance. But without doubt, our aim is to get back in within the next 3 years. But the sooner the better.
You'll enjoy Christmas '96, I guess.
Yeah, you know, I mean, people keep talking about dipping away at the end of the season, but the only season I was here, we didn't dip away, and we'll attempt to do that again.
Still, things were looking good for the Canaries. They'd perhaps dropped too many points at home, but they were unbeaten in front of their own fans, a record which was tested by Sheffield United at the end of October. The visitors led for much of the match thanks to a goal from Peter Cachuro midway through the first half, a well-taken header. And from then on, it was a question of whether Norwich could find a way past Alan Kelly, another goalkeeper who somehow managed to produce an inspired display at Carrow Road. He was eventually beaten by Neil Adams. The goal came from a free kick awarded for a foul by Chris Short on Keith O'Neill and prompted a celebration which had clearly been well prepared, if a little short-lived. The shot was at last too good for Kelly and took Adams' total for the season to 8 goals. Norwich had made it 1-1 and earned themselves another point. But that unbeaten home record was next tested by Charlton. Adrian Forbes was given his full Canary debut against a side who arrived at Carrow Road without a point from their previous 7 away games. And yes, the inevitable happened.
Now it's Forbes, still with Forbes. Took a deflection and eventually booted to safety by Stuart Farmer. But what a splendid start Adrian Forbes is having. Prepared to take defenders on and prepared to shoot. Now Kinsella. Robinson. Lieben is forward. Here's O'Connell. Now Kinsella. Newton. Good approach play by Charlton Athletic. It's Allen. And this time it's in. Bradley Allen was denied in the first half by a super save by Brian Gunn, but then Gunn could do nothing. Fleck. Good control by Robert Fleck. Turned away from Rufus. Run through one challenge. Milligan. That's the equaliser. Mike Milligan's first goal of the season, and it couldn't have come at a better time for Norwich City. A game which was slipping away for them, and suddenly they're level. Good play initially by Robert Fleck, and it was teed up there by Rufus for Milligan. The Charlton defender could do nothing but play the ball into Milligan's path. Rufus under pressure from Forbes, and a super finish from Mike Milligan. Norwich level after 71 minutes. Robinson with a free kick. Now Kinsella. Tremendous goal from Mark Kinsella. Mark Kinsella puts Charlton 2-1 up. And what a magnificent goal it was. There appeared to be no real danger. It was a knockdown from Lieben. And a brilliant goal from Mark Kinsella.
And we're disappointed. I mean, our home record was there, and we were proud of that. Hopefully now it's shown us what we need to do in home games. We need to score first and take control of the game. I think that's something that's important now that we work in training for the next 10 days and we do something that rights that.
It was a break from league action next when supporters packed into Carrow Road to pay tribute to Brian Gunn, celebrating 10 years at Norwich with a testimonial match against a Manchester United team which included Eric Cantona. A tear in the eye for Gunn as the bagpipes played and the crowd responded. This is how the game shaped up.
Right. Norwich being forced back. Fleck, who turned his old teammate Bruce there. Goss. Just like the old days from Jeremy Goss. Now the responsibility is with Adrian Forbes, the 17-year-old. Good play by Forbes. Excellent play by Forbes. Excellent cross too. And a goal for Neil Adams. But it's been disallowed. Alan Gunn, the referee, suggesting that there was a tug, but it was super play by Adrian Forbes. Cantona. Now Scholes. Cantona. The move always likely to break down on the end of a very congested Norwich City penalty area. Real buzz whenever he gets the ball, Eric Cantona. Well, the most important save of the night by Brian Gunn, and he made it from Mike Milligan. Scholes. Came off Such. Appleton to take the throw for Manchester United. Norwich ready to make one more substitution, and it's a substitution in goal. Brian Gunn says his farewells. A huge ovation for Brian Gunn, and a thank you for Alec Ferguson.
Come on, Bubsy! Give it a clean sheet! Woo! I kept the clean sheet against Man United, that's my claim to fame now. Oh, that's nice. Clean sheet. Yeah, great atmosphere. Just needs a goal now, I think.
Thornley. Cantona again, still very much involved. And it's been put in by Terry Cook. Thornley is free, Scholes is in the middle. Clegg has come forward to join them. Here's Scholes. That's number 2. And United are in for a third. And it's been scored by Ben Thornley.
I'd just like to thank Alec Ferguson for taking such a strong Man United side down. And the likes of Eric Cantona and Brian McClare staying on the pitch for 90 minutes is a credit to the club. I'd like to thank my own team, Norwich City, putting such good effort in. Unfortunate the result wasn't with us tonight, but that's not the matter on this thing. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming along tonight, for supporting me in my testimonial season, not only in my testimonial season, but throughout my career at Norwich. I've been here for 10 years now, and I hope to be here for many more, and I've really enjoyed my time. So thank you, each and every one of you. Thank you.
After the celebrations, Norwich were brought firmly back down to earth by Barnsley, the team who'd go on to take the football world by surprise and mount a sustained, successful challenge for promotion. They showed signs of the quality which would stand them in such good stead by beating the Canaries 3-1 in Yorkshire. Defender Adrian Moses opened the scoring early in the second half, and Norwich rarely threatened to drag themselves back into the game. It took Barnsley just 6 minutes to add a second. The Canaries may have questioned whether there was a case for the offside flag to be raised before Paul Wilkinson touched the ball over the line. Both teams started and finished the match in the First Division's top 4, but there was no doubt who was the more impressive on the night. A mistake by Daryl Such allowed John Hendry to add Barnsley's third after 74 minutes. A minute later, Norwich managed to pull a goal back through Rob Newman. A scramble in the Barnsley defence, and Newman well placed to take advantage. But the match ended Barnsley 3, Norwich 1. So 2 successive league defeats, and Norwich desperately needed some reward from their home match against Reading midway through November. The match marked another milestone for Brian Gunn, his 450th senior appearance, but he was beaten 11 minutes into the second half. Trevor Morley with a firm header. The match was marred by a series of bookings and 1 red card. That was shown to Reading's Mick Gooding. He had the thankless task here of chasing the flying Darren Eadie. and could have few complaints when the referee sent him off for that ill-timed intervention. The free kick from Neil Adams came to nothing, but Norwich did finally equalise through Keith Scott. Scott was in good goal-scoring form at the time, 3 goals in 6 appearances, 4 of them as substitute. This time he'd been on the pitch for just a couple of minutes when he headed in Edie's free kick. A point for Norwich then from a 1-1 draw. Reading thought Scott had handled. The referee and Norwich had other ideas. The next match for Norwich should have been at West Bromwich Albion, but the state of the pitch told the full story. Football was simply impossible. So an afternoon of inactivity for the Canaries. The delights of playing at the Hawthorns would have to wait a while. The next major activity at Norwich happened off the field as cookery expert Delia Smith joined the Carrow Road board, along with her husband, the writer and publisher Michael Wynne-Jones, and plenty of fresh ideas.
1 in every 6 football supporters is a woman. I'd like to see that up. I'd like to see more and encourage it if I can.
And there were other significant changes announced at the news conference. Other new directors welcomed on board were businessmen Michael Folger and Barry Skipper. And a new chairman was also unveiled. He was former vice chairman and board member for 10 years, Barry Lockwood. A director of a road haulage company from Kings Lynn, Mr. Lockwood is, needless to say, passionate about the Canaries. He's also keen to make an impact.
The club traded quite comfortably within a £2 million overdraft until relegation came about. And the big mistake that was made there was that we maintained a Premiership setup on First Division income.
So it was all change at boardroom level, and a new era was ushered in. But the much-respected Geoffrey Watling would still be involved as the major shareholder.
Well, it's been good. I mean, obviously the fact that Delia Smith, her husband, Michael Folger, Barry Skipper all came onto the board, and of course the thing that hasn't happened in previous years, they've actually put some cash into the club, and that was vital at that particular time. So, you know, that was very important. But generally the relationship is good. You know, they're ambitious, they want to go the right way now, and that's important for the club and the players.
So a new look to the boardroom, and the Norwich players aim to celebrate with a double. Their first league double of the season, to be precise, as they took on Birmingham. The Canaries had won 3-2 at St Andrews little more than a month before, but they were unable to repeat the performance. It was an afternoon settled by just 1 goal, scored by Martin O'Connor midway through the second half. Norwich could have equalised just a few minutes later, but they were denied by the excellence of goalkeeper Steve Sutton. Mike Milligan's shot from 25 yards turned onto the post. But Norwich were left kicking themselves after being given the perfect chance to equalise from a penalty in the dying moments of the game. The Birmingham defenders were certainly at 6s and 7s as Norwich tried desperately to salvage something from the game. But just as it seemed the chance had gone, the referee pointed to the spot after Gary Breen had handled. The man leading the Birmingham protest with passion, on loan Matt Jackson, number 2 here. With regular penalty taker Neil Adams sitting on the bench after being substituted, Robert Fleck stepped up to take the kick, only to see his efforts saved by Sutton. A desperate end to the afternoon for the Canaries, who now failed to come up with a win in 5 matches. That sequence was to be stretched to 6 as they tumbled to a 2-0 defeat at Huddersfield, a game the team and the fans who travelled to Yorkshire would rather forget. The goals which settled the match were both scored by Andy Payton, the first a header after 33 minutes. The McAlpine Stadium held some unhappy memories for the Canaries. A 3-2 defeat the previous season had come in controversial circumstances. This time there could be no complaints as Payton added his second after 55 minutes. 2-0, the closest Norwich came, this free kick from Neil Adams, and the Canaries were beginning to slip. In fact, the table in early December showed the team in 7th position. At the end of the season, that would have left them just outside the playoff places. But of course there was still a long way to go before anything would be decided. But what Norwich needed was a quick revival of fortune, starting with a home match against Crystal Palace.
Shipley, here's Viet, Intricate on the edge of the penalty area, chance for Shipley, and a goal for Shipley. Just 3.5 minutes gone, and Crystal Palace in front. It's Neil Shipley's 5th goal in just 9 games since joining Crystal Palace from Southampton. It's Adams, and it's 1-1. Neil Adams has equalised for Norwich City. Top scorer this season now, and top scorer with 9 goals. And so many of them scored from free kicks in situations like that. It might have been Crook with the free kick, instead it was Adams, and he managed to squeeze it right past the Palace wall and beyond Chris Day.
So the match ended 1-1. It also ended in unfortunate scenes after this late incident. Darren Eadie brought down by Kevin Muscat, and more players became involved in an incident which quickly spiralled out of control. Later in the season, the two sides will be fined £40,000 by the FA, 30,000 of it suspended. On the day, Palace had Muscat and Ray Houghton sent off. The match was to be followed by a trip to West Bromwich Albion, a fixture which had been postponed once because of the weather. How the Canaries wished it had been called off again. Commentary comes from Clive Tilsley.
Seemed to get a nudge then. It's Hamilton. It's a great chance. It's 1-0. Ian Hamilton makes the breakthrough for West Bromwich Albion. He's having such a good season. There was a hint of a penalty here, a hint of a push on Andy Hunt there. But whether it was an advantage played or the referee decided otherwise, Ian Hamilton took his own advantage. Throws to Hunt. Towards Hunt. It's there. And on the stroke of half-time, West Brom go 2 up. Andy Hunt's header seemed to take an age to get there, but it looped beyond Brian Gunn. And West Brom have a 2-0 lead. Toledo, it's all happening to his right here. Snakers is breaking, and Hamilton is breaking, and here's a real chance for Hamilton. He's round Gunn, and that's 3. And Hamilton took his chance beautifully, committed Gunn, stepped away from him, and rolled it into the empty net. Mistake by Newman, and here goes Hunt. He's all alone. In fact, Pesky Toledo's having the ball with him. It's going to be Andy Hunt though. Now it's Paul Pesky Toledo, and that is 4. Well seen by Agnew. Still Agnew. And now Hunt. And now 5! Here's O'Neill, and there's a consolation for Norwich City. Sweetly taken by Keith O'Neill, not a trace of joy in his face. Some happy Norwich City fans getting some applause from the goal scorer Keith O'Neill. Showed some strength, and then he showed an awful lot of ability. Just pinged it beyond Crichton and actually clipped the inside of the post on its way in. Well, that's the talent of the man.
The 5-1 defeat was bad enough, of course, but the very next fixture was to prove that things could get worse. Indeed, they did. It took Port Vale just 7 minutes to take the lead through Andy Porter. After that, a lull before the floodgates really opened, and Vale scored again just before half-time. Stuart Talbot showing impressive composure to make it 2-0. That was the cue for the home team to move into overdrive, leaving the shell-shocked Canaries to lick their wounds. Goal number 3 came from Martin Foyle. He was left with the simplest of headers to beat Brian Gunn from close range. Number 4, and perhaps the pick of the afternoon, came after 62 minutes. Once again, Gunn could do nothing to prevent Talbot's stunning shot from flying past him into the net. On to number 5 now, this time scored by Lee Mills. The goal was uncomplicated, a through ball from Steve Guppy and a confident finish from Mills. And the misery was complete just a minute from time, as the ball found its way into the Canary net for the 6th time. Lee Mills giving Foyle the goal-scoring opportunity. 6-0, a minute to go, the perfect time for a Canary comeback. Well, maybe not, but they did score in the dying seconds through Robert Fleck to make the final outcome at Vale Park. Port Vale 6, Norwich 1.
The reason we had a couple of our results in this year was really we lost a couple of experienced players. I mean, I'm referring basically to the West Brom game and Port Vale, where we lost 5 and 6. We had to put younger players in defence, and we didn't play particularly well on the days, and got tanned basically. So all it did was laid bare the fragility, if you like, of the actual squad.
Clearly, Norwich were in need of fresh blood, and it came in the shape of Matt Jackson, a defender signed from Everton for about £500,000. Jackson was plucked from under the noses of Birmingham, where he'd been on loan. Was he worried by the challenge of prompting an immediate Canary revival?
No, not at all. It's nice to really come to a club where if you're letting 5 on your debut, it's an improvement. You can take a bit of credit for it.
What we do know with Matt is we can play him at right back. We can play him as a sweeper if we decided to change to a sweeper. And I know his best position is centre half, and that's where we envisage playing him.
So much expected of Matt Jackson, a man who arrived with glowing recommendations and board approval.
That was where, again, a little bit backing from the board was needed, and that was the little testing time, that I realised, which we half knew anyway, that if one or two crucial players got injured at the wrong times, we might struggle, and that was the first sign. So eventually I found that Jackson hadn't signed for Birmingham, which we all thought he had, and I really just went to the board and said, look, I need a bit of cash to get a centre-half, and they duly obliged, and Matt's here now and did very well.
Jackson made his debut on Boxing Day at Loftus Road, and certainly there was a distinct improvement in the Norwich performance, although they fell behind midway through the first half. One of QPR's expensive signings, Gavin Peacock, on target. But undaunted, Norwich equalised through captain Ian Crook before half-time. The Canaries' chance seemed to have come and gone, until Crook's speculative shots somehow caught out Tony Roberts in the Rangers' goal. Embarrassment for Roberts then, but QPR responded almost immediately, regaining their lead before the interval. Simon Barker, the creator, Daniel Di Chio, the goal scorer, and Norwich were once again on the ropes. Yet again, though, they gathered themselves together to come up with an equaliser. 16 minutes of the match were left, and a mistake by Danny Maddox was punished by Darren Eadie, whose shot was far too good for Roberts. But there was heartbreak for the Canaries 5 minutes from time, as Rangers came up with a winner which must have left Mike Walker wondering just what his team had to do to end their depressing sequence of results. The goal was scored by Andrew McDermott, and it left Norwich beaten 3-2. But there were major signs of improvement for Norwich and their supporters. And improved performances were to be reflected in improved results, as 1996 gave way to 1997. First, the Canaries said farewell to 96 with a 2-0 home victory over Bradford. The first goal came from the spot after Andy Johnson had been fouled by the combined efforts of Andy Kiwomya and Andrew O'Brien. Neil Adams, the man who just doesn't miss from the penalty spot, sending Mark Schwarzer the wrong way. And it seemed as though the Canaries' luck was finally changing as they clinched all 3 points on the hour. A Norwich breakaway prompted the decisive second goal, which completed the Canaries' first league double of the season. The goal scorer was Keith O'Neill, and the Canaries collected all 3 points for the first time in more than 2 months. So farewell to 1996 and welcome to 1997. and a very welcome 3 points thanks to a 1-0 win over Portsmouth. The match was notable for two very good reasons: another clean sheet for the Canary defence and a first goal in Norwich colours for Matt Jackson. It came with 12 minutes left of his third appearance. It was hardly a contender for goal of the season. Jackson on hand after Pompey had failed to clear Andy Johnson's downward header. But it was all part of a man-of-the-match display from Jackson, and 3 points on New Year's Day. That victory, coupled with the win over Bradford, had a positive effect on the league table, which showed the Canaries back in the top 6 and bearing down on Wolves and Crystal Palace. Things would get even better through January. But next, the Canaries turned their attentions to the FA Cup and a third-round match against Sheffield United. They won it thanks to just one goal, which was scored by John Polston. Polston, hardly a regular goal scorer for the Canaries, but this was his second of the season, and it was certainly another important one, as he volleyed the ball past Alan Kelly after his initial header had been saved. But the game will surely be remembered by everyone for an incident in the Norwich goalmouth which really needed to be seen to be believed, as Sheffield United squandered more chances in one 15-second spell than some sides get in an entire 90 minutes. If ever an incident was worthy of a slow-motion action replay, then this was it, if only to prove that what you just seen did in fact happen. It all started with a massive scramble as 6 players rose to head the same ball. The ball struck the Norwich woodwork no fewer than 3 times. There was a fine save from Brian Gunn, thrown in for good measure, and the Canaries must have been wondering if their name was on the cup, as the saying goes. Norwich through to the 4th round, but only just. The Canaries showed off another new man for the league game against Grimsby. David Rocastle was beginning a spell on loan at Carrow Road after getting few opportunities to shine at Chelsea. A former England international, Mike Walker saw him as an experienced figure who could help in the push for promotion. Match commentary on Norwich against Grimsby comes from Tony Jones.
Eadie slipped, so Grimsby can come away here with Gallimore. Mendonca, chance here for Leicester. It's still with Leicester, and what a super finish and what a terrific goal for Grimsby Town. Jack Leicester puts Grimsby ahead after 21 minutes. Wonderful skills by Leicester. Eadie with a corner, touched on and touched in too. It's John Polston. Norwich level after 28 minutes. Newman. O'Neill. Wasn't a bad volley there from Keith O'Neill, who set himself up nicely, and Crook in turn to set up Darryl Sutch, who's put Norwich 2-1 up. It's only his second goal of the season, and it was created by Ian Crook, who's celebrating his 34th birthday.
That 2-1 victory over Grimsby was followed by a similar result against Stoke, a result largely due to a blistering start by the Canaries, which produced 2 goals in the opening 11 minutes, the first of them from Keith O'Neill. O'Neill would surely be the first to admit that he was lucky not to be penalised for a foul on the Stoke defender here, but he certainly made the most of his good fortune. That was after just 4 minutes, and the Canaries moved further ahead soon afterwards. The goal scorer, Darren Eadie. Neil Adams involved in the build-up this time, and Eadie was able to beat Mark Prudhoe in the Stoke goal. The Canaries kept former teammate Mike Sheeran off the score sheet, but they couldn't prevent Mark Steen's quick reply for Stoke. Just 14 minutes of the match had gone, in fact, when Steen made it 2-1. That was the way the scoreline would remain, as Norwich collected another valuable 3 points. The only worrying moments when Keith O'Neill was carried off the pitch on a stretcher near the end of the game. The next match in the 4th round of the FA Cup was sure to be an emotional occasion, a chance for Norwich to take on Leicester, a team managed, of course, by Martin O'Neill. formally in charge at Carrow Road. He was to be the one who got the result he wanted, but not before an eventful 90 minutes had elapsed. Ian Marshall opened the scoring for Leicester, a goal particularly sweet for him as an ex-Ipswich man. It was tough on Norwich though, who were without O'Neill, Johnson, Polston and Rocastle for various reasons. Soon after the goal, both sides were reduced to 10 men after an altercation. Neil Lennon and Matt Jackson, the men shown the red card. Norwich responded well though, and were level before half-time as Adrian Forbes earned them a penalty. Leicester felt aggrieved that the spot kick had been awarded, and the incident certainly seemed to take place outside the area. But Neil Adams was once again Mr. Reliable from the spot, and the teams were level at 1-1 at half-time. The match was eventually settled by another hotly disputed penalty. This time the guilty party was deemed to be Canary defender Rob Newman. A foul on Emil Heskey was referee Alan Wilkie's verdict. Newman, though, felt he'd been a victim of foul play by Heskey long before the action reached the penalty area. The experienced Gary Parker ignored the inevitable furore to step forward and make the final score Leicester 2, Norwich 1. The Canaries' cup hopes had died for another year. Next came a trip to Merseyside to take on Tranmere. It was to be a match which went down in Canary history as one of the most farcical ever. Thick fog meant spectators could see little or nothing of the action. The manager and coaches were equally in the dark. Let's face it, even the players struggled. What happened, apparently, is that Tranmere won the game 3-1, even though Norwich took the lead through Darren Eadie. If you're wondering, you've already missed Eadie's goal. In fact, it's now 1-1. Paul Cook's just equalised for Tranmere, stole in on the blind side he did. Many fans could only keep in touch with the state of play by interpreting the reaction of supporters in other sections of the ground. All very frustrating, and in truth, the patience of some of those that made the long journey from Norfolk was stretched beyond breaking point. But the result, 3-1 to Tranmere, would go down in the record books, with Ian Moore adding Tranmere's second before Cook got his second of the night. It was 3 points Norwich could ill afford to drop against a team who'd be rivals for a playoff place. But it was all a perplexing experience for those involved.
I was at that end with the Norwich fans in the first half when Darren Eadie scored, and we didn't realise he scored. We could only see to the halfway line. So that's the first sort of occasion that's happened to me in a football match. I didn't actually know what's happening at the other end of the pitch.
It was it was a bit of a farce again. One of those things. I mean, the referees decided he's going to play it. It was the only people who come out of it with any sort of bonus was obviously Tranmere because they won. But I would keep telling everybody we played great that night. It was just 3 unlucky goals.
Thankfully, the fans had a much better view of the Canaries' next match. It came at home against Barnsley.
Rocastle is beaten by Eden, and it's taken a deflection, and it's in off Ian Crook. Nicky Eden delayed his run until the last possible moment. Rocastle couldn't get the challenge in, and when the shot was drilled in by Eden, it deflected off Crook to give Barnsley the lead. Hendry switching quickly. Eadie, who's turned and spun away from Moses, but the flag is already up, although Robert Fleck has put the ball into the back of the net. Darren Eadie is absolutely furious with that decision. You can understand Darren Eadie's frustration because he turned his marker, he got past Moses, and he got the cross in, which was put away with some confidence by Robert Fleck, but the whistle had already gone.
Norwich were reduced to 10 men just before half-time. The unlucky Robert Fleck, the man dismissed. But against the odds, they fought back to take a point from the match.
Away by Moses. Handball by Wilkinson. Quickly taken by Milligan. Eadie. He's got the equaliser. Norwich City are level. Darren Eadie's 9th goal of the season, and it came with less than 2 minutes on the clock. Handball against Wilkinson. Milligan with a quickly taken free kick, and a splendid finish by Darren Eadie.
Right, all right. Norwich then made the trip to Yorkshire to take on Sheffield United, one of their big rivals for a playoff place. It was another eventful match, watched by Rob Hawthorne.
And here's a chance, it's Bjorkoft, and turned in by Kachuro. Within a minute of the start of the second half, Bjorkoft and Kachuro combine. It's 1-0 Sheffield United. Quickly to Adams. 5 Norwich players waiting in the penalty area, 6 United defenders. And Kelly came and lost it! Offerson in there looking for it. And have they forced it in? They have! Johnson claims the credit. Alan Kelly wonders what happened. The ball somehow slipped from his grasp. Norwich bundle the ball over the line for the equaliser. Reggie Nielsen has taken on the mantle of goalkeeper because Alan Kelly feels he can't continue. So Nielsen has 21 minutes left in which to hold out. Looking to slip in behind Gareth Taylor. Otterson free, and here's Otterson, and that's the goal for Norwich that beats the substitute goalkeeper and gives Otterson his first goal in English football. Nielsen, the first effort at his target since he came on, and there was nothing he could do about it. Here, slipping short through, 4 United players, 5 now in the box, and it's there! Andy Walker has got the equaliser. Adams slipping it across. Oh, it's an own goal! And for the second week running, David Holdsworth has put the ball in his own net. Howard Kendall can hardly believe it. He got an own goal in the match against Swindon last week, and he's done it again.
A welcome piece of good fortune for Norwich then, and they felt they had a point to prove when West Brom arrived at Carrow Road. That 5-1 defeat at the Hawthorns still fresh in the memory.
Another searching ball from Crook. Johnson beaten by Agnew. Crook prepared to play his way out of trouble. But Scott has given the ball away. It's Pescasolido, and it's 1-0. Paul Pescasolido's 12th goal of the season. Scott was too casual. Pescasolido was in quickly, and the goal was at his mercy. 1-0 Albion. Squared across, but more problems here for Norwich. It's Hunt. Came away, off gun. Easy for Snakers this time. That just about sums up Brian Gunn's afternoon, and that sums up Richard Snaker's afternoon. Rocastle beaten by Hamilton. Pescasolido on for Hunt this time. It's Andy Hunt against Brian Gunn, and Pescasolido claims his second. Such. Johnson, who's pushing further forward. Such. Tremendous goal from Darryl Such. Only Darryl Such's 3rd goal of the season, but he saw Paul Crichton off his line, and he punished the Albion goalkeeper there. Set up by Johnson, executed by Such. Onside, Pescasolido, he's on for his hat-trick. He's got his hat-trick. Here's Danny Mills. Eadie is ahead of him. He's seen him this time. Appeals for a penalty, and Norwich have a penalty. Never any doubt in Roger Fernandez's mind then. Tremendous run by Danny Mills initially. Eadie timed his run to perfection. Stumbled over Crichton's outstretched hand. 5 out of 5 so far this season. 6 out of 6. Neil Adams' 12th goal of the season. 6 of them from the penalty spot after Paul Crichton had pulled down Darren Eadie.
And the drama kept coming thick and fast through February. Next up, it was a trip to Charlton. 90 minutes of football produced 8 goals and a sending off. In fact, Stuart Barmer had already been dismissed when Neil Adams gave Norwich the lead with a perfect free kick. But then 2 free kicks at the other end of the pitch enabled Charlton to turn a 1-0 deficit into a 2-1 lead. The equaliser, another fine effort from Mark Kidsella. The second Charlton goal left Brian Gunn fuming as his defensive wall failed to block Mark Robson's shot from an almost identical position. But from that moment, Norwich were in control for long periods. They made it 2-2 just before half-time. A fine shot from Darren Eadie. And 2 more Canary goals looked like sealing an important victory. Adams got his second of the game from the penalty spot. And then with just 6 minutes of the match remaining, Darren Eadie completed a double of his own. Eadie certainly proved too hot to handle for the Charlton defenders. This was his 11th goal of the season. So, 4-2 to Norwich, the Norwich fans delighted, but the drama was far from over. John Robinson's cross enabled Jason Lee to head home and make it 4-3, but surely the Canaries could hang on. Well, sadly not, as Charlton scored the equaliser with 3 minutes left on the clock. This time the cross came from Sean Newton and the header from Carl Lieber. The unlikely final scoreline, Charlton 4, Norwich 4.
Credit to Charlton, they fought well with 10 men, as we've done ourselves this season, and it just shows you how difficult it is to play against 10 men. But we got ourselves into a 2-goal lead, and really we should have killed it off then. And we're all absolutely gutted. I mean, we could have pushed ourselves right up the table, pushed ourselves more into the promotion race. The teams below us, some of the teams have won and they've caught up again. So, really disappointed, really.
A trip to Southend at the end of the month brought a point from a 1-1 draw, with both goals scored in the second half. Andy Thompson gave Southend the lead as their battle to avoid relegation went on, but it was a goal that will haunt Brian Gunn. It looked like being enough to consign Norwich to defeat, until the intervention of Robert Fleck with just 3 minutes of the match remaining. Fleck on hand to score his first goal in more than 2 months, and Norwich had rescued a point. The result at Roots Hall made victory at home against Huddersfield imperative a few days later. Mike Walker decided to make a significant change to his lineup, bringing in Andy Marshall in goal in place of Brian Gunn, the first time Gunn had been dropped in 10 years at Carrow Road. Marshall went on to keep a clean sheet. The match produced a 2-0 victory, but also saw the Canaries' disciplinary record take another turn for the worse. Norwich took the lead though after 33 minutes through Darren Eadie. Just after half-time, Huddersfield were reduced to 10 men as Tom Cowan was sent off. This challenge on Robert Fleck brought his second yellow card, and the red followed immediately. As far as the points were concerned, Norwich wrapped things up with a second goal after 53 minutes. An excellent finish from Eadie, his 13th goal of the season, and his 7th in 8 matches. But then came more red cards from referee Andy D'Urso. There was certainly no doubting the passion of both sides, particularly as this incident on the edge of the Norwich penalty area developed. Eventually, though, Norwich defender Kevin Scott and Huddersfield striker Andy Payton tangled, and both were dismissed. Afterwards, managers Mike Walker and Brian Horton had similar verdicts. The referee had overreacted to various incidents during the afternoon, which warranted little more than a ticking off. However, Mr. D'Urso was determined to keep a tight rein on all indiscretions. 5 other players were booked, and then in the dying moments of the match, Darren Eadie was sent off for the second time in the season. Eadie penalised for that foul on Paul Reed, and bearing in mind what had been happening throughout the game, there was only one outcome. Eadie was off. But Norwich were 2-0 winners, and the table still made pretty satisfactory reading, with Norwich 5th. Bolton were well clear at the top, but there was quite a battle going on for the second automatic promotion place. Norwich's trip to Reading deserved to yield at least a point, but once again they found luck had deserted them. They fell behind to a goal of real quality from Reading's Trevor Morley after 20 minutes. Morley, formerly with West Ham, produced a bicycle kick which gave Andy Marshall no chance. But it took City just 7 minutes to come up with an equaliser. Darren Eadie brought down by goalkeeper Steve Motone. The referee awarded a penalty, which was scored with the usual confidence by Neil Adams. But Adams' evening was to turn sour with just 4 minutes remaining. Martin Williams surely fouled Matt Jackson in the build-up, but when he crossed the ball, Adams made an untimely intervention to score an own goal, and it ended 2-1.
As far as we're concerned, it was a foul. He's full back, trampled on, and there's no way he could get an advantage on him because he was the wrong side of him anyway. So at the end of the day, Jackson, as far as we're concerned, was brought down. The linesman was within, 5 or 10 yards. He didn't give it, the referee didn't give it, so at the end of the day it goes on. But, we're particularly disappointed because everybody felt it was a foul.
Another revenge mission next at Carrow Road as Port Vale came to Norfolk. Both sides no doubt conscious of that 6-1 scoreline earlier in the season. Matt Jackson gave Norwich the lead after 11 minutes. But Port Vale equalised midway through the first half, and the points would be shared. The goal came courtesy of a fine pass from Ian Bogey and a confident finish from John McCarthy. Norwich won, Port Vale won, but the Canaries' poor disciplinary record was about to take its toll because of suspensions to key players.
50% of the bookings and the sending-offs I don't think were justified, and I think we could show that on video and we could prove that. I've seen many other situations happen at other clubs where people have been punching people and not even got sent off. So I think in this day and age, the way the refereeing is, that you're going to have to accept that, and we nevertheless will try very hard to improve that next season. I mean, as you know, before when I was here, we topped the Fair Play League, and I haven't preached anything different since I've been here. But what has significantly changed is the standard of refereeing, I feel. But we'll have to try and cope with that, because that's something that we've got to learn from. But it's very, very difficult in a physical contact game if you're going to get booked every time you tackle.
Those suspensions will be particularly evident in the game against Crystal Palace. Darren Eadie, Kevin Scott, Mike Milligan, Danny Mills and Neil Moore all serving bans and unavailable for selection. It was no great surprise then that Norwich lost the match 2-0, with the first goal coming from the penalty spot for a foul by Carl Bradshaw on Leon McKenzie. Dean Gordon scored confidently past Brian Gunn, recalled to the side because of an injury to Andy Marshall. And Palace, who'd go on to clinch promotion to the Premiership via the playoffs, completed a 2-0 victory just 5 minutes later. David Hopkins' right-wing cross headed in by the impressive McKenzie. 5 players suspended, add to that injuries which kept out Andy Johnson, Keith O'Neill and John Polston, and the Canaries' fate at Selhurst Park had almost been sealed before kick-off, despite the best efforts of Robert Fleck. Palace 2, Norwich 0. Champions-elect Bolton arrived at Carrow Road with an impressive record and an impressive reputation. But there's no doubt that they were troubled by the Canaries, who could have taken the lead through Darryl Such here. His shot just wide. But Bolton returned home to Lancashire with yet another 3 points and yet another league double, thanks to a single goal after 24 minutes, scored by Scott Sellers. A patient build-up, and good work by Nathan Blake before Sellers took over. Sellers did well to pick his spot and curl his shot beyond the despairing dive of Brian Gunn. One good point for Norwich was the return of Keith O'Neill after a long injury layoff. He did his best to conjure up an equaliser, but it wasn't to be, and it was a disappointing defeat for Norwich.
Oh, it's great to be back. Just very disappointed with the result, really. I thought we battled very hard and we didn't get anything out of the game.
You certainly had your chances today, and you personally had one reasonably good chance.
Yeah. The ball, Matt Jackson, I think, played a great ball in, and I thought Keith Brannigan was coming, so I tried to lift it over him, but he came and he stopped. And I loved it, and it was up in the air a long time, I just went over the bar. But when your luck's not going for you, that's what happens.
The Canaries' hopes of reaching the playoffs were fading, but they certainly weren't prepared to give up without a fight. They produced a highly impressive performance at Swindon to stay around the fringes of the top six. Darren Eadie scored the first Norwich goal, and there was no looking back. The shot's well worth another look. Few would have tried their luck from so far out. Eadie, though, a man full of confidence. The second for the Canaries was down to the efforts of Eadie and Robert Fleck, and was scored by Keith O'Neill. Given plenty of time and space by the Swindon defence, his well-placed shot went in off the post. And Fraser Digby was beaten again in the 75th minute. Eadie with his second of the game as he raced past the overworked goalkeeper to score from an acute angle. Easter was off to a promising start, but another 3 points were needed 48 hours later, on Easter Monday, against Oxford. Norwich gave a full debut to 18-year-old Drew Broughton against Oxford, and it was a promising introduction, but the result of the match was less encouraging. It all ended in a 1-1 draw despite an excellent start to proceedings, as Norwich took the lead after 9 minutes. Darren Eadie maintaining his fine form with another goal. Matt Jackson set up the opportunity with a long through ball, and Eadie did the rest. But it was a case of 2 points dropped for the Canaries as Oxford came up with an equaliser before half-time. Paul Moody's cross from the right was met by the unmarked Stuart Massey, and suddenly the Easter celebrations didn't seem so enjoyable for Norwich. So the Canaries were running out of time if they were to gather enough points to reach the playoffs and a possible trip to Wembley. It all made the trip to Molineux at the start of April vitally important.
Roberts lurks in the centre, still Goodman, going for goal! Got with a save, but Thomas is there. Jeff Thomas has scored for Wolves. Good ball into Goodman. Return Newman, too quick for him. Goodman going through, a left trailing, and it's a penalty. No hesitation at all from Kevin Lynch, pointing to the spot. All eyes on Keith Curle, the Wolves captain, who scored from the spot in the 2-2 draw at Queen's Park Rangers earlier in the week, and scores again. 10 minutes to half-time, and Wolves are in control. That's Fleck to Darryl Such. Looking for Eadie. Eadie's header, and a chance and a goal from Broughton. 18-year-old Drew Broughton has pulled his team back into the game. His first goal for Norwich. Monday's game against Oxford was his first full league outing. He's in from the start again today, and he's read the intentions of Eadie well. Sneaked in there beyond Atkins to guide the ball in. 2-1. 2 minutes from half-time. Eadie has gone across with Ian Crook. Newman couldn't turn, but it's a penalty. Neil Adams has never missed a penalty kick in his professional career. All the pressure's on him now. Just before half-time. Adams against Stowell. 2-2. What a dramatic turnaround at Molineux. 2 goals in 2 minutes, to the relief and delight of Mike Walker. Milligan working hard to keep the door shut at the back. Ferguson on for Thomas. Ferguson again. Roberts lurks in the middle. So is Goodman. Roberts! Ewan Roberts to restore Wolves' lead.
It was all a cruel disappointment for Norwich. Their playoff hopes were becoming more and more slender. Before the home match with Stoke, Canary fans were given the chance to pay tribute to one of the club's legendary figures, former goalkeeper Kevin Keelan. Keelan was on a visit to the city from America. It was all part of a major celebration of the past, and the warmth of the welcome for him and other past heroes was genuine and prolonged. Keelan clearly enjoyed every moment. He and the others in the crowd certainly enjoyed a 2-0 Canary victory, which could hardly have started more spectacularly. Just 12 seconds had elapsed, in fact, when Keith O'Neill opened the scoring. He was the first Norwich player to touch the ball. It proved to be a decisive intervention. Ironically, though, Kevin Keelan missed it. He was still taking his seat. What followed couldn't match the drama of the opening few seconds, but Norwich did at least clinch all 3 points with a second goal from Darren Eadie early in the second half. It was Eadie's 17th goal of the season. The Canaries then with a win to stand them in good stead for the next match, the East Anglian derby. Ian Crook led out the Canaries at Portman Road for a match which Norwich simply had to win if they were to maintain slim hopes of a playoff place. Ipswich were in a far better position to finish the season in the top 6. Tony Jones is the match commentator.
O'Neill tried to find Such, but the pass intercepted by Uhlenbeek. Uhlenbeek now has an opportunity to take the Norwich defence on. Uhlenbeek finding a way through, a good opening and a good save there by Andy Marshall. O'Neill. Norwich pushed further and further back. Adams and Eadie both being forced to drop to deeper positions to try and find the ball. But it's Ipswich who have the ball here and breaking in great numbers. Sedgley. Now Gregory. Sedgley again. Tarico is ahead of him. Here's Tarico, and that's 1-0. 32 minutes gone, and Ipswich Town's player of the season has put them ahead in probably the most crucial game of the season. Sedgley, decisive ball forward towards Goodmanson, who buckled under the challenge of John Polston. So sharp a challenge that Polston is into the referee's notebook. It was Gregory who felt the force of Polston's challenge. Sedgley's been known to curl them from there. He's left it for Mason. It's still with Mason. Ricochet away. Back in by Williams. Norwich labouring to get the ball away. And that's Mason. And that's 2. Paul Mason was unsuccessful from the free kick initially, but he was bang on target as Norwich struggled to get the ball away. Mason's first effort charged down, and when Williams whipped it back into the penalty area, Norwich struggling to get the ball clear, and it fell so invitingly for Paul Mason. Crook. Eadie was fouled by Williams. Norwich want to take the free kick quickly, and it was Newman who was forward, and Newman who produced a good save in the end from Richard Wright. Eadie ran into Sedgley. Tremendous drive and a tremendous stop too there by Richard Wright in the Ipswich goal. Vaughan eventually to get the ball clear, but Richard Wright then showing why he's such a highly regarded goalkeeper. Mills, Crook, now O'Neill. This is better from Norwich. It's still with Keith O'Neill, and it was turned aside by Richard Wright.
There'd be no more goals in the match. One fine save from Andy Marshall. But playoff hopes were finally dead for the Canaries, although the size of the task had been evident for some time.
You keep going right till the end, you know. I mean, there's no way that you can you think you're not got a chance until you haven't got a chance. But I think, you know, the writing was on the wall when we lost. We had a bad 2-month period, in my opinion, after Christmas, when we had a combination of injuries, suspensions, and we lost, or we didn't win games that we should have won. And that was what proved. I mean, it wasn't losing at Ipswich that did us, really. It was probably 7 or 8 games prior to that.
The final home match of the season came against Manchester City. It ended in a goalless draw, but there were several positive signs for the Canaries, who fielded a young side. The closest they came to breaking the deadlock was when the perseverance of Danny Mills earned him a shooting opportunity. He was denied by a fine save from Martin Margetson. Manchester City also had their chances, and quite how they didn't score in this incident, nobody really knows. Nigel Clough was the man with the best opportunity, but he hit the post, although much credit again went to Mills. The match ended 0-0, just one game left to complete the season. It was to be a finale to forget for Norwich, who were beaten 3-0 by a team relegated to Division 2. It was difficult to find much positive to say about the performance. The tone was set after 28 minutes. Oldham's Sean McCarthy happy to take the credit here. Just a minute later, Oldham had added a second. It was scored by Matthew Rush, leaving Andy Marshall to rue the thankless task he'd been handed for the afternoon. Rush started the season with the Canaries, of course, so the goal was especially sweet for him. Marshall actually did his best to keep the Oldham strikers at bay from that moment on, but he was beaten once more by Stuart Barlow. Rush's cross created the opening for Barlow, whose finish was assured. So the final score on the final day, Oldham 3, Norwich 0, and this is how the final table looked. Bolton were runaway champions. They finished with a massive 98 points. Second place went to Barnsley. They were 4 points clear of Wolves in the table. And despite finishing 6th, Crystal Palace would earn a place in the Premiership via the playoffs. Norwich City's season, which had promised so much for so long, ended with the team in 13th place, and according to the manager, with one big problem to overcome.
Well, we obviously need more strength in depth. I mean, that was obvious, but a lot, as you say, some of that was brought on ourselves through suspensions. Some of it was just injuries, which is unfortunate. I mean, Tim Sheffield will tell you it's the most horrendous sort of injury list he's ever had consistently. So hopefully that will right itself. But I think really we just need to push on. We've got a platform. We've stopped the rot. That's the most important thing. We were spiralling downwards rapidly. We've now stopped that. We're disappointed with the end of the season. I have to say that because, you know, we missed out. Oh, that happens. But even then I thought we should have at least finished 7th or 8th, at least. So that's still a disappointment. But we have got a platform to build from, and we really do need now to push on and not let it drop away, because we have stopped it. We have stabilised. The next step is now to push on.
And the fans can play their part in that as well.
Definitely. I mean, to be fair to them, they've been excellent this season. Yes, we would like 16 to 18,000 crowds because obviously that's going to help us. But we were getting a genuine 14,000 and more. I think the game against Ipswich here, where we played particularly well and won well, was due partly to a full house where the fans were magnificent, and that lifted the players. And I think the fans sometimes don't realise how important they are. But equally, you know, we've got to do it on the pitch too, trying to attract them in as well. So it's a bit of give and take.
And so to the future, which will shape up something like this. This is the new strip the Canaries will be wearing, unveiled in a special fashion show in London. Mike Walker's hoping the performances on the pitch will be of similar style, and Norwich City will be all the rage for the rest of 1997 and beyond.